The damage to Donald Trump and his reputation is already here. His many failures combined with the multitude of betrayals of the MAGA base on things like Epstein and starting new wars and all of that seems to be chipping away at his support. A little bit within the core MAGA movement, but much more so in the even more politically relevant and electorally relevant independent group. And so let's jump to these numbers. The top line figure, his disapproval rating has hit an all-time high since the beginning of his second term. That's according to The Economist. He's now at 55% disapproval, 41% approval. And I know what you're thinking, how is it still 41%? And you're right, but understand we are a country with a very powerful political cult and some of them will never turn on him, but it is still progress. It's moving in the right direction. But as I said, the overall picture is not the most important part here. Let's talk about independents. So if you looked at Democrats, he was at 12% approval when he got elected, which is maddening, but it's not anymore. Now it's 3%. There's still 3%, by the way. Now let's look at independents. 41% approved of him right after he took office in January. That's the honeymoon period, 41%. He's at 29% today. He's lost like 1 in 3 independents who supported him no longer support him, with my understanding of how math works. And so 1 out of 3 in 6 months, that was fast. Wish they could have come to that conclusion a year ago. We'd be in a very different situation right now, but they have caught up. Now, the depressing thing, I guess, is 94% of Republicans had approved of his job back in January, and that has tumbled all the way to 92%. He lost 2%, so that's good. Hey, people can learn. 2% of them anyway. And so, okay, that's depressing. I don't want you to be depressed watching this. So let's jump to more good news. You remember in 2024, the big story of the election was young men are now for Trump. Well, that has been shaken a little bit as well. So new CNN poll shows 40% of men younger than 35 approve of his job, 60% disapprove. That is down from 44% approval, 54% disapproval in February. So he's lost about 10% of his support among young men, and 6% of those young men now disapprove him that didn't before. And on the topic of Epstein, they absolutely hate his position on this. By the way, 10% are satisfied with the information that's been provided. And so that's important too. That was supposed to be the big thing. Again, that's the Rogan audience and everything, right? Well, 1 in 10 of them aren't interested in me either. But really, Sharon, for me, it's the independents. I mean, they are after all the ones who help determine how the swing states go and all that. And so if he has already lost a third of his independent support, that's pretty bad. But what do you think?
It's pretty bad, and how does he turn it around? You can't really tell him anything. I mean, he pivots sometimes and can be slightly disciplined if victories within reach, but it appears that no one's been able to get to him, especially late night hours. So this is a problem. He's bleeding here, and the only thing that I think might be a saving grace is who is that MAGA crowd going to turn to? It's not Elon Musk. Who's that person that if they really want to quit him, they'll start dating? I don't know who that would be. Do you? I mean, it's so. Maybe he recovers because he's the only one left, or maybe they go headless. We don't have a leader.
Well, you mean like within the Republican Party, other than him?
Well, MAGA. Yeah.
The issue, it's impossible to say. And JD Vance wants it to be him, but bear in mind he's not disagreeing with Trump on the Epstein stuff. And so if there's a stink here, it's on Vance as well. Some of that stink is just an old used couch, but some of it's Epstein, and people aren't going to like that at all. And so maybe, I don't know, has Ron DeSantis had anything to say about Epstein? By the way, if you're a Republican who wants to run in 2028, now is an opportunity, albeit a risky opportunity, to really set yourself up potentially for some success. Again, you might be nuked, you might be destroyed by Trump in the meantime, but if Ron DeSantis were to come out right now and been like, you know what, I'll do what Donald Trump is too terrified to do. I'll release every file if you put me in the office, then maybe he'd actually have something.
Can I tell you something? John Ossoff, the senator who's up for re-election, next year, I guess. He was in Savannah on Saturday. And I mean, there was a huge crowd. And guess what he talked about? Sexual predator and hiding things. Epstein. It was over and over again. And people were responding to it. And some of those young men were responding to it. So I think you're right, but you'd have to be bold and seize the moment. You'd have to do it now, and that's risky, because you never know with this crowd.
Yeah, look, and let me just briefly say, this is obviously a powerful issue, and I do think that there is something that is being covered up, and so I'm glad that the Democrats are actually using it. Hakeem Jeffries is talking about it like constantly now. I will say, like, zoom out. Do I want the only thing that people think about in American politics to be shadowy networks of PDF files? No, there's a lot of other stuff going on, but one election cycle. How about that? We'll give them one. There'll be no downside to that.